Hello there, how are you doing today? Sorry about the wait, technical difficulties. Anyway, let's get on with it. Fallout 4 is a game about having the cleanest launch in Bethesda history. Sure, that may not actually be what this game is about, but let's all take a moment to admire that I encountered 2 bugs in my first 5 hours of play at the midnight launch. 2 bugs throughout an entire 5 hours, and neither of those 2 were game-breaking or gameplay-altering. Both of them were physics-related and did nothing but distract me temporarily. So not only has Bethesda managed a stable release as far as Bethesda releases go, aside from some very minor performance issues, Bethesda has managed to release a stable product as far as video game releases in general go, so that's a massive step forward we should all congratulate. Now, let's move on from praising Bethesda's steadily improving business and development practices. A quick all-encompassing description of Fallout 4 is that Bethesda took everything that was done even slightly awkwardly or poorly in Fallout 3 and New Vegas and did it much better. And then Bethesda wasn't satisfied, so they decided to take everything that was amazing about Fallout 3 and New Vegas and improve that significantly as well. And then they realized they had another 3 years to develop the game, so they decided to include an entirely new set of interesting, creative, and fleshed out mechanics to act as an addition to the already bountiful side objectives for you. Can you tell I love this game yet? Okay, this review isn't 100% glowing, so let's go ahead and talk about the rust on the new suit of power armor before we talk about all of its neat new gadgets. First off, something I'd like to point out as a huge fan of the original Fallout games is all the unnecessary stylistic changes between enemies and items across the series. Though this isn't specifically Fallout 4 related, I think this is still worth pointing out. I can definitely appreciate the addition of new weapons and enemies, and Fallout 3 was faithful for the most part to the original 2 games. But Fallout 4 has unnecessarily changed the design of too many enemies for me to sit idly by without mentioning it in a YouTube video on an incredibly small channel. It's inconsistent and distracting when you have the roughly humanoid Mirelurks from one game turned into shambling crab monsters in the next, or rad scorpions losing their smooth, shiny texture only to turn rough and jagged. Sure, environmental differences may play a part in some of the changes, but for the most part it just feels unnecessary. And of course, these environmental changes shouldn't mean all that much, because you have a lot of the same altered creatures from Fallout 3 back in the Mojave right next to the original games. Another minor gripe of mine is that the companion AI seems to have gotten much worse since the last 2 games. My companions frequently run into walls or stand and watch me fight things rather than engaging the mutants trying to strangle me with my own intestines. Of course, Bethesda being Bethesda, this is one of the small handful of bugs I've sadly still encountered months after release. Enemies occasionally go into T-poses after being shot instead of fighting back, occasional crashes, seemingly random framerate drops, NPCs I'm supposed to be escorting disappearing after fast travel, and most baffling of all, getting 5 frames per second on the main menu and the save game menu. Let's just drink that in for a moment. Yeah. Now, this is from roughly 50 hours of play, and aside from the obvious launch bugs, all of which were physics-related and non-game breaking, those are pretty much all I've encountered. This game is actually fairly stable as far as Bethesda games go. Congrats, Bethesda, you've done us all proud. Now, outside of bugginess and inconsistency between games, Fallout 4 also suffers from mouse acceleration that requires mods or tampering with game files to turn off. This, coupled with a pesky 60 FPS lock and an FOV lock, has made many PC gamers vomit into their $400 gaming buckets. These problems only apply to PC, of course. If you're a console gamer, you either don't notice or don't care about FPS caps and FOV locks, and you can continue on blissfully unaware. Another sour note on Full Stop 4's Symphony is one shared with Skyrim, the fact that it's far too easy to gain trust and status with any number of organizations in the game. Becoming more notable in Oblivion's Thieves Guild was a difficult task, and joining the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 3 took real effort. But now you follow a radio signal for a bit, kill some ghouls, follow a guide to kill some synths, and bam, you're an honorary member of the Brotherhood of Steel, and a few quests later you can be knighted. There's no real satisfaction from rising up the ranks when a rank up is essentially a participation award. One final thing to note is that this game reuses some mechanics from the other Bethesda Fallout games. It's definitely added far more than it's reused, but if you're looking for some kind of wild variation to the old hacking and lockpicking system, you'll be sorely disappointed. Now, since we've got all that out of the way, let's move on to what I liked about the game. In other words, time to effectively quadruple the length of this review. Now, if you were to name the 3 things Bethesda does best in their games, I'd be willing to bet one of those 3 is interesting, fun to explore worlds. Fallout 4 has my favorite Bethesda world since Oblivion's Shivering Isles, and any of you that have played the Shivering Isles DLC know just how amazing that world is, and I cannot stress this enough. Not only is it fairly large and packed with secrets, unmarked locations, and a fascinating element of verticality thanks to the mostly broken down skyscrapers, it's also aesthetically brilliant and beautifully colorful, making an already highly engaging game even more so. The utterly brilliant sound design and soundtrack, both ambient and through the in-game radio, work perfectly to accent the world. The revamped, much more tactical combat and gunplay system, now incorporating great feeling, actually usable melee combat and weighty, massively customizable weapons, is also a huge A+ on this game's report card. Actually having a combat system where VATS, the Vault-Tec assisted targeting system, isn't entirely necessary to play is a great experience. And of course, Fell Swoop 4 is well optimized and great looking, so aside from the minor bugs I mentioned before, there's not much there to distract you when raiders want to hang your jiggly bits from hooks in their front yard. Even then, that isn't all this game has to offer. The settlement building system and the need for resources to upgrade your weapons and armor has added an entirely new and fascinating layer to the game. You feel like much more than just a survivor of the wasteland. You feel like you're playing a very important role in unifying said wasteland, actively going around aiding and rebuilding settlements. And when you're not doing that, you feel like much more of a survivor in this game than in any other Fallout game. Not only does this game have one of Bethesda's first well and truly balanced difficulty curves, the aforementioned weapon and armor upgrades that require materials to perform make scavenging for materials far more interesting. Now not only are you looking for ammunition, better weapons and armor, medical supplies, or your next to methane-based inhalant, you're looking for any bit of scrap you may find useful. I have not until now played a game where I've been overjoyed to find a large stash of duct tape. Now not only do you have to actively scavenge for enough tin cans to put a jetpack on your power armor, another new obstacle to deal with is radiation. Radiation has never been an actual threat in any other Fallout game, even the brutal first two games. But now instead of giving you debuffs at an arbitrarily high amount and eventually killing you at an excessively high amount, radiation puts a cap on your health. It's always there now, always making you worry. Radiation damage is, would you look at that, an actual hazard in a game taking place in a nuclear wasteland, and I think it was an amazing change. Another great thing about Frantic Oval 4 is its writing. I feel every bit of build-up, I feel every intense moment of it, every twist and turn the story takes me through. I enjoy every minute of my conversations with the lovable NPCs. I feel like my own character far more than in any other Fallout game, with my own very important role in the story. A major point of the Fallout series has always been its deep character creation. When the game was teased and trailers were released, many were disappointed with the voice-acted main character, the slightly simplified dialogue, and the skill tree replacing the skill numbers. But for me, all this has done is add to the experience. The skill tree has helped immensely with choosing a direction for my character, and the fantastic voice actors for the protagonist didn't distract from my roleplay-heavy experience at all. If anything, Brian Delaney's and Courtney Taylor's fantastic voice work make everything my character goes through all the more intense. Everything about this game, systems and mechanics both new and old, work together in perfect harmony to create one of my favorite games ever made and my favorite Bethesda Fallout to date. Of course, I don't think I should keep on talking about this game. For the sake of avoiding readers' theater, I'll stop it here. I can give you nothing but pure, solid recommendation for this game. Have fun in your new second favorite wasteland. Of course, your first is Fallout 1 because you should have played that by now. Wait a minute. You haven't, have you? Well, I guess I have my next review, don't I?